Welcome everyone. Today we're going to do a sequence of movements that are particularly good for the spine, for the low back, for the hips. So I hope this is going to really help you with any tightness and difficulty in that area. And again, we're always working with these principles of staying really present with what's actually happening for us in our body as we begin the practice, but as we move through the practice too. So every movement that we do is helping inform us of what's actually happening and how we can best interact with it so we get the most benefit. So we're going to start from the seated position and then gradually come onto the floor. So as you come up and sit, just notice for a moment, let your attention just start to settle to the part of the body that's touching the chair that you're sitting on, and again, hopefully you're not too much needing to lean back, so you can really be supported by your hips. And also feel your feet, the way that your feet are on the ground, and just notice what's happening in your upper legs, your hips, your lower back. And then we're going to keep our attention at the point that's connecting the floor to the base of the spine to the chair. And we're just going to do some circles here where we're circling the pelvis around. And let that help you connect with what's happening in your low back. And you can also let that feel like it's moving into the upper back and neck, and it's moving down into the legs. So just a few easy movements circling around. Other direction as you're ready. Starting to feel perhaps a little opening of the breath also into the movement. Again, just checking in with your low back. You can continue to circle, or you can just let your weight shift around a little bit and then just come back to your center. So we're going to do this practice mostly on the floor, and if you don't want to come onto the floor, you can watch and you can make a variety of those movements also happen from the chair. But we're going to come on down. And again, if you need something under your head because your chin is higher than your forehead, then take a blanket or a pillow. So you feel a nice balance through the spine, the back of the neck, into the hips. And just take a moment to let your hands come and rest onto your belly or alongside the body. Take a few breaths here to also just notice all the points of connection that your body is making with the floor beneath you. So see if you can notice what part of your body touches the floor and what part of your body lifts up off the floor, and the pattern that's created through that contact. And then also notice what parts touch the most and what parts lift up the most, and what that helps us become aware of what we're feeling through our body. And then we're going to do this movement where we take one of our knees and we just gather it up into the chest. The other foot is going to just stay flat on the floor. Your pelvis is going to stay somewhat balanced, but you're going to take the one knee and just let it gently come towards you. Let your shoulders relax. Notice if you can just open a little bit more into the flow of your breath. And then with the knee that's coming towards you, you can just let it simply rest there, or you can let it begin to just pulse a little bit in any way that would feel good. Just a little bit of movement that helps you feel the hip on that side and helps that hip start to release a little bit. Any holding, any tension that it's ready to release. Notice that you want to have your shoulders and your neck able to also kind of unwind tension at the same time. So any way that you can help that happen in your neck and your shoulders. And then we're going to bring both feet onto the floor. And we're going to take our arms up. So just for a moment, reach up through the arms. You could also reach out if that felt better on your shoulder. You could reach out nice and wide, or you could reach up above you. Just want to take a nice moment to stretch from the fingertips, the length from the hips to the fingertips. And then when your arms come down, you're going to gather your opposite knee towards you and just let it gradually come into your chest. Again, now the other foot that's on the floor, just rest there. Your hips stay pretty balanced, but you're letting the knee, the bent knee coming towards you, just find a way to help that hip begin to release. When you're doing this, just notice how your breath responds to the movement of the knee, and see if you can encourage the breath to come a little bit more fully down into the lower lungs and belly. And if you find that there's tension in your shoulders and your neck, see if you can also let the shoulders and the neck release a little bit as you're moving. And then when you're ready, both feet come down. Again, reach through the arms. Nice extension up, perhaps reaching wide or reaching up above you. And then the next time your arms come down, go ahead and take both knees together into your chest. And do the same thing that we just did. Let both knees and both hips together now. Just move a little bit. They could just, in stillness, come towards you with breath, or you can let them pulse a little bit. Towards you, away from you, side to side, little circles. Tuning in with your attention towards your hips and your low back, and just noticing what you're finding there. What are you feeling today in that area? And then we're going to bring our feet again just onto the floor, hip width or a little bit wider, and let your hands just rest wherever they're comfortable on your body. Again, for a moment, notice when you come back with your feet and your pelvis, the way that your feet and pelvis rest and the way that that feels through the lower legs and through the thighs. And then again, we're going to just let the weight rock to one side of the pelvis. So you could drop your knees if you wanted all the way, but you don't have to. You could just let your weight shift and roll to one side of the pelvis, and then through center and to the other side. You might do this a lot quicker than me, or you might do it slower than me. Just feel a sense of rolling along the point of contact that the back makes with the floor, and shifting a little bit from one side to the other. And as you do that, notice what happens down through the legs, and notice what happens into the spine. And if you want to start to add the head movement, you can let the head respond to that, either moving the same direction or the opposite direction of the knees. And you can stay pretty close to the midline, or you could start to let your knees fall a little bit further away from the midline, depending on how it feels in your body. Notice also how it feels in your breath. So the movement is starting to help the breath open. And then come again, so when you're ready, you just at neutral spine. So the knees are straight up and the feet are flat. And then we're going to let the pelvis just rock a little bit towards the tailbone and towards the low back. So again, as the back moves towards the floor, we want to do that on our exhale, where the breath is also emptying and pressing the belly towards the spine. And then when the breath comes in, the belly fills and we rock to the tailbone. And when you do this, the movement becomes a way that you can perceive a little bit more clearly your own hips and back and belly. So you can feel the breath moving in, moving out, and the movement opening into the hips, into the back. And then when you're ready again, gather your knees into your chest. And this next movement is a really nice, a little bit of a strength movement for the core, but it's gentle enough that you can do it without hurting your low back. So one of the knees stays into the chest, the other leg extending up through the heel. And we're just going to take that straight leg and we're going to drop it down. There's a few variations. One is that we just drop it a few inches and we let it come back up. So depending what's happening for you, thigh bone to hip and into your low back, you might just go a few inches, or you might come lower so that you're almost coming down to the floor. And that's decided on when you do the movement. If you feel resistance, then you just come back up. So again, it could be a very small movement, or you can drop it all the way down almost to touch the floor. And you want to start to feel, as you do that at your own pace, a nice smoothing out of the transition of the muscles that engage and lengthen and release along the pathway of the movement. And notice that you can keep your shoulders relaxed and your breath deepening as you do this. We're just going to stay on this one side for a few cycles. Again, sometimes just moving a few inches down and coming back up, especially if you have something kind of in that hip, maybe an injury or something on a certain side. Sometimes the smaller movement is actually more effective to open the pattern there that might have been locked. And then sometimes if we go lower, we start to feel the strength energy in the muscle activating and waking up all the way through the deep abdominal muscles that support the lower spine. So we're going to just take a little bit of time on that side and then gather the knee in and take a moment to just release your back. And then let the other leg extend up. Reach into the heel, draw the toes towards you, and feel the muscles hug a little bit to the bone and anchor the hip in its socket. And then again, just lower down, maybe just an inch or two. Try that maybe just as an option. You could do that a few times, just a very small motion. And then if it feels like your body would like to, you can let the leg lower all the way down, almost to touch the floor, like you were hovering there. You can feel the muscles connect from the leg into the deep abdominals, waking up the deep core, and then bringing the leg up. And you can feel, oftentimes there's little jagged places in the movement or stop-start places, and we're just wanting to slowly smooth that out, intentionally smoothing out the pathway of the movement. And again, feel like whatever range of motion feels correct to you is going to be the best one, whether it's small or large. See if you can keep letting go of the shoulder blades into the ground, into the floor, so the chest can unbind any tension, and you can open up the depth of your breath as you move. Sometimes when we do this, we'll tend to gather tension in the jaw. So see if you can let go of tension in the jaw, in the eyes, and deepen the flow of your breath. And then as you're ready on that side, we're going to, again, bring both knees in and just let the knees move a little bit side to side. And then again, just bringing your feet back onto the floor and your arms either on the body or at your side. And for a moment, see if you can really let go of the thigh bone. So sometimes when we do those other exercises, we activate strength in the thigh, which is really good. But then when we bring the legs down, we want to see if we can let the muscles that connect into the thigh bone start to relax. So just consciously for a moment, see if you can let the upper leg and the hip just relax, feel the natural balance into the feet and into the pelvis, so your thigh bones don't have to work too hard. And then come and bring your hands again onto your belly. Take a moment again to just notice where you feel the breath most. Do you feel it at your nose as it comes in? Do you feel it in your chest? Or do you feel it under your hands in your belly? And see if you can just let your attention notice the natural pathway of your breath and rest into it. See if you can relax any tension in the body that doesn't add a quality of support to the function of the breath. So this Next movement is going to come from that. You can keep your feet either hip width apart, or you could bring your feet more close towards each other, close to your midline, almost touching. The movement here is very simple. We just let the knees slowly open away from each other as you breathe in, and then come back towards each other as you breathe out. So it's like similar to the last movement. Is how far open the knees go is entirely up to you. They might just go a centimeter or a few inches and then come back together, or they might open all the way, if you were really flexible, almost to touch the floor and then come back together. So what you want to be listening for here is right in your hip socket. You want to get a sense that we're smoothing out that movement into the hip socket. Again, you might experiment if you have your feet next to each other or if you have them hip width apart. The in-breath takes them open, and the exhale brings them together. And you don't want to feel like you have to force the movement, so staying within the range of motion that feels best for you. As you open and as you close. And in the same way, as we're smoothing out the pathway of the movement, of any of the jerky quality in the muscle, we're also hydrating the tissues around the hip socket. So we're allowing the natural fluids and resiliency in the tissues around the hip. Again, feel totally fantastic. If for some reason the range of motion for you is a very small range of motion, sometimes you will get the greatest benefit from that smaller range of motion, hydrating the tissues around the hip. And sometimes it feels really good to go wider. You can do this movement where the pelvis stays completely neutral. So you're just feeling this butterfly action in the thigh bone itself, opening and closing. Or you could add a little hip or pelvic tilt. So when the knees come together, you press the low back into the floor. And then when the knees open, you allow yourself to rock a little to the tailbone. The breath comes, expands more into the belly. Again, sometimes we'll notice when we're opening the hips that the jaw adds a bunch of tension. So see if you can keep undoing or unhinging the jaw. So just letting the lower jaw naturally release away from the upper jaw. And then take a moment when you feel ready to just let your legs rest. They could rest hip width apart, or you could have the feet together, the knees wide, or you could have the feet a little bit wide and the knees together. Just find a position that you can relax for a moment into whatever you're noticing on the level of sensation. Let your eyes close. And see if you can feel the reverberation of the movement that continues as you rest into the stillness. So there'll be like a wave of movement or a wave of sensation that keeps going even when the body comes to stillness. And we just let ourselves rest into whatever that is that we're noticing in that. See if you can encourage the natural opening and flow of your breath. And then when you're ready, again, we're going to take the knees up towards the chest. And we did this in one of the other videos where we're going to take the knees into the chest and feel that action. If you really hug the knees in, the hips want to lift a little bit up off the floor. And then if you take the knees out, feel what happens in your low back. You can start to actually pull the knees into your fingertips and let that drop your shoulders away from the ears. But if you went a little bit higher, it would actually lift your chin a little bit, and you like create a little bit of curve there in the back of the neck. And then when you bring the knees back in, it flattens the back. You can lift your tailbone. You're just going to do that a few times just to feel whatever you notice on that pathway. Again, it can be a smaller range of motion, or you can kind of accentuate it a little bit if that felt good. And then as we bring the knees in, we want to find a place where as the knees come in towards us, we feel the deep abdominals turn on, because this next movement is really great for the spine, but it's using the muscles at the front of the spine to open the spine. So when the knees come towards you, look for the deep belly turning on and feel the length pattern in the back. And then we're going to keep our knees there and open our arms out to the side. So just take a moment to feel resting at your midline, so the knees are right at your center, your nose, your chin are right at center, and your belly is a little wakeful, your back is long. And then we're going to take the knees just an inch or two to one side and the head in the opposite direction. And again, look for the deep abdominals turning on, and then come back to center. We're going to add this on our breath, but for the first time, just explore it as a movement. So let your knees move a little bit to the other side, and let your head move the opposite direction your knees went. Look for the deep belly lighting up and turning on, and then come back to center. So when we move to the side, do that on your exhale. Feel the belly move towards the spine and the deep abdominals turn on, and then inhale as you come back to center. Exhale, knees and head in the opposite direction, deep belly turning on. Inhale to center. Do that another cycle, your own pace. And then if you wanted to, in this movement, when you come to the side, you could actually stabilize yourself there. So it's an engaged twist. You use the muscles in the core and along the side of the back to just balance you. And you can just hold it for a few breaths before you come back to center and to the other side. You can get that nice sense of the tone in the muscle helping open through the different spaces in the bone, through the spine, through the rib cage, through the pelvis. And when you come back to center, just let your hands come back to your knees. You can just let your back rock out. At any point, if you got tired earlier, you just take a moment and pause. You can bring your feet back onto the floor and just take a moment to rest there. See if you can notice all those little places that we're working and engaging through the different actions that we've done so far. For just a moment, asking or inviting those places to relax. So we want the muscles in the body to both have the capacity to engage and strengthen, and we want them to have the capacity to rest and to let go. So for just a moment, feel that